Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be able to introduce Christian Hasker, who's the CMO of Hedera Hashgraph, a company with one of the coolest names I've ever heard. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. It's great to be here. I've been following the show and excited to talk with you today about distributed ledgers.
Well, perfect. And before we get into those distributed ledgers, tell us a little bit about yourself, Christian.
Sure thing. So I currently lead, as you said, the marketing efforts here at Hedera. And prior to that, I have about 20 plus years of experience in enterprise software, predominantly in the database space. And I've held a variety of roles, mainly in product marketing and product management and marketing. And just prior to coming to Hedera full-time, my last gig was at DataStax, which is a database company that is rooted in open source. And so, it's kind of exciting being able to take that knowledge and apply it to a new space, because at the end of the day, a distributed ledger isn't too different from a database.
Absolutely. And we'll get into some of that there. So tell me, how did you first get involved in distributed ledger technology?
Yes, great question. If 18 months ago, you'd have told me that I would be here full time, I'd have said, Kevin, you are full of it. No way. And that is because when I left DataStax, I set up my own consulting company, actually focused on product marketing. So I wanted to help smaller startups, all the things that I'd learned the hard way at DataStax, all the mistakes I'd made in product marketing, be able to help other companies. And I had a thriving pipeline, was helping out a bunch, had no desire to take another full-time gig for a long time. And then a friend of mine who had done some early PR at DataStax, she said, I'm working at this new company. They have a super cool technology. It's a consensus algorithm. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yes.
And, they need some help in positioning, messaging, and bringing this to market. And so I thought, glad to help. I met the founders. I did some positioning and messaging, helped with their launch last year in March 2018. And I was going to be on my merry way after that. No desire to really take a full-time gig. And the CEO, Mance Harmon, said, we'd like you to come full time. I was like, no, I'm good. I'll help you recruit someone. I'll do knowledge transfer. No problem. He said, come to Dallas, he's based in Dallas, by the way.
Yes.
Spend the day. Let's talk it through. And I said to my wife, I'm going to go, I'm going to humor him and, be on my way back. And it isn't even that Mance gave me the hard sell, to be honest. But
yes.
He started to paint this vision of what this technology and platform can do over the long haul. And he said one thing that really stuck with me. I've been in Silicon Valley for 20 plus years, as I said. I've worked with a bunch of startups, and I've never heard this phrase, and it just stopped me in my tracks. He said, we are building a 100-year company, and we want you to be involved. I was like, wow, 100-year company. No one talks like that in Silicon Valley, right? It's like, let's do 5 years, maybe we IPO, but no one is setting out from the beginning to build this long-term company. And when you think about building a long-term company that's in it for the long haul, your mindset actually adjusts and you do things very differently. And that was just so exciting. It's an exciting technology in a brand new space with a team that's in it for the long haul. That was pretty cool.
Man, I've never had the opportunity to talk to somebody that had that kind of long-term vision. As you pointed out, everybody's looking at, an exit. When they start, they're already looking at the exit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, we just got back from Seoul, Korea, doing sort of an Asia announcement last week. And our CTO and co-founder, Dr. Lehman Baird, he got up on stage and said, "It's been a long journey, and we're now at the beginning." And that stuck with me as well, because, it's been a long 18 months, but we're barely starting out on this journey.
So, Christian, for those that aren't familiar with the whole concept of distributed ledgers, why don't you give us a briefing there?
Yes, certainly. So you are using what we term as the correct phrase for this, which is distributed ledger technology, DLT. But, many people refer to it as a blockchain. And there is the capital B, the blockchain, which is either the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain. And then there's a small b blockchain, which really is a synonym for a distributed ledger technology. So a distributed ledger technology or a blockchain, let's talk about what the state of play is today. I assume you get a paycheck?
You assume correctly.
Hopefully you get a paycheck. So today when you exchange assets, so you get your paycheck, that transaction is controlled by a bank, right? You have to have a bank. So the bank validates that your employer has enough funds, it validates your account, and it moves the required funds from your employer to your account. And you're a little bit richer, and your employer is a little bit poorer, and that is all done on a ledger for the bank. And that is how they keep a record of these transactions back and forth. You can look in your bank statement and you see that transaction. So you can extrapolate this to other exchange of assets. If you rent a house on Airbnb or you hail a car from Uber, they sit in the middle. They are an intermediary that is between you and the driver or you and the renter of the house. And they are maintaining a ledger of these transactions. So with a distributed ledger technology, what we're really saying is that thing that sits in the middle, let's invent a way that we can exchange assets between us without having to have a centralized intermediary. So you have a group of computers, nodes in the network, and each node in the network maintains its own copy of the ledger itself. And the nodes in the network all update and communicate with one another, and they come to consensus on the veracity of the transactions. So when you have a public distributed ledger like this, it really becomes, in many sense, game-changing for the types of ways that people who don't know each other and have no reason to trust one another can actually interact and transact together without the need for this thing sitting in the middle, the intermediary itself. And that's really game-changing. So, the first sort of instantiation of this was Bitcoin, which for the first time in history, you said, I don't know about in history, but the first time in a very long time, you have money that is not backed by a government. And it's not the government responsible for printing that money and the banks for distributing that money and keeping a transaction history. It's basically a set of nodes in the network that allow us to exchange currency with one another without a bank sitting in the middle, and solving this issue, which hadn't been solved before Bitcoin, which is called the double spend problem. And that was something that had plagued digital currencies for a long time, and why you always had to have someone sitting in the middle reconciling these transactions back and forth.
So tell me, Christian, what is the handful of problems that a distributed ledger is designed to solve specifically?
Yeah, so let's go back to the issue of trust.
Yes.
Today, you have a level of trust in your bank.
Mm-hmm.
You have a level of trust in your social media. You have a level of trust in your cloud provider. But all of these organizations, they have centralized databases. And, every day you see, oh, this database was compromised and, a hacker stole this, that, and the other.
Yes.
In a public distributed ledger, you don't have to trust. So it solves that issue of trusting one entity in the middle. And it also is a much more secure way. You don't have a single attack point for hackers. It's very hard to attack a network of nodes altogether. Like, you may compromise some nodes, but attacking the whole system becomes a lot harder. So it's more, it solves this challenge around security as well.
Okay.
So trust and security.
Got it.
And then it also has the potential long-term, this vision that we're getting to is the internet today there's not really fair value exchange that happens. You have over, the last few years, there are a handful of companies that have amassed such a volume of data, and they have monetized that data in such a way that, we've given up our data. We are the product, right?
Yeah.
There's Tim Cook expression, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. And that, it's a good soundbite, but it's actually very true.
Yes.
Data, you hear about it being the new oil. And the people that have amassed all this money they're like the new oil barons, from the last century.
Yes.
Nothing against them. That's, the business model that has worked, but it's not fair value exchange. You should own your data. You should be able to decide how much of your data to give and provide, and also to be fairly compensated for that data as well. So we think of distributed ledgers as being a foundational element for how the internet was first envisaged. And it was really envisaged as a much fairer, level playing field than the one that has come to pass. In fact, the original visionaries of the internet, like Dr. Tim Berners-Lee, there is, sometimes you'll hit this, by the way, there is an error message called the 402 error. You'll hit it just like a 404, oh, I can't find this page. And a 402 is actually a native internet payment. The internet was designed originally that we could transact with one another. And for whatever reason, it just did not get implemented. And we're now moving to a world where, we've retrofitted traditional currencies for us to interact on the web. They're not really designed for that. And now distributed ledgers are coming along, and they're solving this pain point of being able to transact online with a native digital method for doing that.
So, Christian, how do you guys monetize that? Because I'm thinking here in a typical scenario of a Silicon Valley startup, they're looking for that ROI to justify selling to a customer. to me, when I look at this and I think about it, and I have read some content and presentations from you guys, this is like a global system that needs to be set up. So you can't just go sell to one company and have it and there be value, right? It needs to be endorsed and utilized kind of on a global basis. How do you guys even start, and especially you as a CMO?
Yes, and it is a great question. There's a lot to unpack in that question. So the short answer, how will we make money at scale, is as a developer to build on our platform. And that's what we are at the end of the day. We're a platform. So without developers building applications on top of the platform, it's just not very exciting. You know, it would be like AWS without any applications.
Yeah.
You know, today you have your Netflix, you have your Spotify, you know, you have all these useful applications. They're all, you know, powered by AWS on the back end. So we need applications. And every developer, in order to build on the platform, they don't need any license at all. But you do need to pay for API calls to the network to ensure that the nodes are compensated and that they can come to consensus on the transactions. So over time, as we become more successful and there are more transactional throughput on the network, you know, we take a tiny, tiny fraction of a percent for each transaction that goes out over the network. But to your point, you know, networks do not launch at scale, right? This is a journey, and so we are well capitalized. We raised last year $124 million, so that allows us to take our time and, you know, build a robust network. But number two, unlike some other distributed ledgers out there, we are truly trying to be the first enterprise-grade distributed ledger. And what this means is that we are working with large global enterprises. They form our governing council. So they actually govern, they run the initial nodes of the network themselves, and they govern the software that will be run by hundreds of thousands of nodes in the network at scale over time. This allows us to have a front row seat, if you will, into the types of use cases that the enterprises themselves are interested in building. And we want to enable them to build on our network. So when you work with enterprises, there are other avenues to revenue: professional services, support, training, you know, proof of concept workshops, things like that. So I think for the first 2 or 3 years, until the transactions can really feed us and scale us, that our near-term revenue will come really from what looks very much like a traditional enterprise software startup model, and learning those use cases and applications and helping those companies to build them, and then those can be taken to a broader market as well.
So Christian, let's talk about those use cases. Are you finding the industry already has them in their mind out there, or are you having to, you know, paint the picture for them and kind of feed the market with ideas on what they can do about it? How are you finding that?
So it is definitely both of those things. So there is the art of the possible. So today on the web, if you watch 5 seconds of a YouTube movie, you know, the person that created that content may or may not get something from YouTube, right? YouTube controls what you can do. The art of what's possible with Hedera is that because of our transactional throughput ability, that you could pay per second of video watched directly to the person who was the content producer. you could implement, Kevin, on Regalix TV, could implement micropayments where you get paid tiny fractions of a cent for every second or minute watched of your videos. You could take advertisements from an ad provider and serve them up to your viewers and say, I'll incentivize my viewers by paying them a little bit to watch your ad. These models are game changing, and that's definitely painting a picture of the art of what's possible.
Oh, yes. When you're talking through this, I'm thinking there can be education where the grades that you earn throughout your history can be shared directly with employers. I can think of everything from medicine, electronic health records, even, the notion that a filmmaker could sell, as you pointed out, directly to his audiences without having to go through the Netflix. So when you say game changer, to me that means there's probably winners and losers. Some that are rooting for your success, and others are like, yikes. So,
yes.
Which industries are happy to have you build this out, and which industries are unhappy?
That also is a great question. I did want to, you hit on a use case that is very exciting, which is credential management, what we call credential management. So when you go on LinkedIn, I'm sure in your position, you have thousands of people that you're connected to on LinkedIn. You go on LinkedIn and really anyone can write anything, right?
Yes, you just hit the little pencil edit button and you can give yourself a master's degree.
Exactly. But how cool would it be for your university to basically endorse your claim on the ledger that, yes, Kevin really does have a master's degree from ABC University, or as an Uber driver, that you really do have a valid driver's license and valid proof of insurance.
Yes.
And then when you don't, when it expires, that you revoke that claim from the ledger.
Absolutely.
So now in your app, you see, I'm just about to get in someone's car and they're not carrying insurance, or whatever it might be. So it's funny, as you were talking, you hit another use case that for distributed ledgers is a good one, and especially for Hedera. Now, taking the other question, which industries are maybe threatened by this technology? I referenced earlier that we have a governing council. Mm-hmm. In Seoul last week, we announced our initial 5 governing council members. One of them is a large global law firm called DLA Piper. And if you had asked me, a year ago, what types of companies would be in your first raft of council members, an old established law firm would not have been top of mind for me.
Yes.
But they see the potential for distributed ledger technology to disrupt the legal industry. Because if you and I can enter into a smart contract, right, if you can sell me your house without having to go through an intermediary, and I can give you money for that house without needing to go through a bank, then, what other complex legal agreements could we get into without the need for a lawyer? So they're actually very excited, and one of the reasons that they joined is they want a front row seat to understanding how this technology can impact that profession, and they have use cases that are almost like a line of business thinking of other ways to generate revenue by actually almost disrupting themselves. And I think enterprises today, the internet revolution was not that long ago. And, the internet revolution kind of bypassed a lot of existing entrenched enterprises. And certainly in our discussions enterprises like, okay, we see distributed ledgers coming. We're not sure all the ways that they could disrupt us, but we want to try and get ahead of this.
Makes perfect sense to me. They don't want to be left behind. They want to be there on front row seat so they can be making those adjustments in a self-preservation mode even.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. And even more than self-preservation, can they unlock a new leg of growth that maybe wouldn't have been apparent to them before?
Oh, yeah. You know, as we're speaking here, I'm thinking about how this could be applied to elections too, you know, given the challenges around validating ballots and all kinds of things. And I could just see how that might be appropriate there. And on another kind of fresh headline topic, let's talk about fake news and what role it might have here. I saw an article this week that shows how artificial intelligence and animation technologies are being used to actually change the sentence that, you know, a politician says to make him sound like he's saying something racist or vulgar or anything else. And it's all done automatically, but it looks exactly like those words are coming out of somebody's mouth. So I can see how very quickly your understanding of what is truth and what is fake news is going to be blurred by, you know, people with malintent using technology. So how can things like news be validated from a news source to distribution and things? Have you thought about that?
Yes. So you can make something fake up and put it on a distributed ledger. And the distributed ledger doesn't know whether that thing is fake or not. But a distributed ledger, a public distributed ledger, is transparent. And so how a distributed ledger technology helps specifically with this issue is, let's take your deepfakes example. So you're going to produce this video. Someone else could take, not maybe that they would want to, but someone else could take this video that we're recording right now and make us say outrageous things.
Yes.
And it would look like, we are saying those things.
Yes.
So what a distributed ledger technology would do to combat this is when you publish this video, you actually claim this is my video, and you put a hash on the distributed ledger of where this video, this original video that is authenticated by you, Kevin, where this lives on the web. So if you have an S3 account and that's where it is, and people pull it down from there, you would have a hash saying that video is produced by me. That is the original one. Any other video that has this content in it that doesn't have this digital signature with it, do not trust it. So that helps with the provenance of these things. Then
brilliant.
The other area that it helps is actually with the economics of this. A lot of fake news on social media pops up so fast and gets disseminated so quickly because essentially it's free. And in fact, over the past few years, we've seen the rise of these headlines that are just clickbait, right? They're trying to get you to click. Why are they trying to get you to click? Because they can sell you more ads.
Yes.
So if you go back to, I read an article and I pay 10 cents for that article as I go, and it's an ad hoc payment where I'm not entering credit card details, I'm not giving you my data, I'm not subscribing for a month at a time or a year at a time, then by making the economics right, then hopefully we will usher back in a period where journalists are being fairly compensated. So if they're being fairly compensated, there's more funds available to do more objective journalism, and they can get out of that clickbait advertising model business.
Oh, I would love that. So there are so many interesting ones. I was just sitting here writing down, education. I could see that same thing in film. I could see that in healthcare records and fake news. This has a potential, Christian, of really changing the way the world works today, doesn't it?
We hope so. I mean, that's why I'm in it. I've been fortunate in my career to be part of exciting startups, and usually an exciting startup is a new technology solving existing business problems. And I think that's why it's fascinating that you really honed in on use cases and problems and pains, because this is a new technology in an entirely new space, but it has the potential to really change how we interact on the web on a daily basis. If we fast forward a little bit, hopefully not too far down the road, maybe 3 years, 5 years, our definition of success is that you will be interacting on the web in a new way with new services, and you won't even know that you're interacting with Hedera under the covers. So think of when you go to a web page today, how many people really understand the TCP IP protocol that's serving that up? You don't need to. You just go, you enter your URL, you go, you see a web page. It's great. And we're kind of in that same era where, we're at the bottom of the stack here. We're the platform and the network, but it's going to be fascinating to see what applications emerge and are built on top of this.
So, Christian, most startups in Silicon Valley, they have their garage story. They can all go in the garage and they can, drink all kinds of energy drinks and eat pizza and come out on the other end with their own product. And then they can, make their best shot at being successful. But the model, you guys, I was reading the model and what it takes and what your ambition levels are. You guys almost have to have like global government ambassadors and trusted committees and all kinds of stuff. How do you even start with that?
Yes, sometimes it feels a little daunting when you put it like that. So our founders, Mance Harmon and Lehman Baird, Lehman invented this amazing consensus algorithm, the Hashgraph consensus algorithm, and that is fantastic. But they also spent as much time thinking about a governing model that will ensure that the DLT is always decentralized. Because what happens and has happened with Bitcoin and Ethereum and these other distributed ledger technologies is the mining power, the hashing power gets actually centralized. You have these big mining operations that have sprung up and they have amassed this power, which means that they can influence the direction of the code base and things like this. So from day one, they had this idea to have a truly decentralized governing model. And what this means is recruiting companies in 18 different verticals on every continent around the world except Antarctica. There won't be anyone in Antarctica. And what this means is that you have people with competing interests, people with different regional views, and that will encourage that we are always a decentralized model, and you can't, amass this power. The governing council members are actually term limited as well, so there will always be new council members coming in, council members rotating out. So there's no incentive to game the system because you will be on, term limited.
Yes.
So this model, what it's done is, you're right, it's a global network. But as you start to talk to entities in those regions, they help with the developer community in those regions as well. So, for example, one of our initial governing council members is Magazine Louisa, You've probably never heard of Magazine Luiza, and that's fine. If you went to Brazil, Magazine Luiza is the number one retailer in Brazil and the number one fastest growing technology company in Brazil. So, as we onboard Magazine Luiza and they govern, then that's going to attract developers locally who are in Brazil to build on the platform as well. So we've been very fortunate to be able to start to build this global movement. Most startups in Silicon Valley, as you said, you're in a garage, you launch in the US, you get some traction in the US, then you think about, I'll go to the UK because we don't have to translate stuff and
yes.
that. And then from there, maybe you go to Germany and then Asia, and it's almost like, what's that? The game of Risk, right? Where you take over one at a time.
Absolutely.
And this is like everywhere at the same time. So from a marketing standpoint, the biggest challenge for us is to think globally, but act locally. So if you're in Korea, we should feel like a Korean company to you, right? We should be culturally sensitive. We should have onboarding materials in Korean. We shouldn't take it for granted that you speak English. And that's just a different set of challenges that are very exciting, but something that's really important if you're going to have global credibility.
Great. I want to thank you so much, Christian, for just, opening the curtains a little bit and letting us peek in and see this world behind the scenes here around distributed ledgers. It's fascinating. I'm wishing you the best of luck. Many of these solutions we talked about today can't come to market fast enough. So I just want to thank you guys for being ambitious and going out there and trying to make the world a better place.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for having me on and also for some great questions. Like, you really just put your finger on some of the use cases that we expect to see materialize. And that's fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone out there that joined us today.